Hi, everybody. It's Susan. And I wanted to come in here to talk about this Aries full moon that's coming up on the 7th of October. That's a universal time. I'm always working with universal time. And for those of you in North and South America, that would be on the 6th of October. For the rest of the world, it's the 7th. So there's a lot of interesting astrology surrounding this full moon. And I'll share a little bit about the family, the lunar family that it ties into as well. And we'll be looking at the Mercury and Jupiter square, which is happening today, and that's where we'll begin this look at the astrology. And just before I start, just so those of you who don't know me yet realize that I am here just behind the scenes. I'm traveling. So I'm not going, I don't have a setup that's appropriate for my recording or anything. I've either got glaring light or no light at all. So you'll just have to wait until I come back to you on the weekend and do another video, and you can meet me face forward. But we'll focus on the astrology nonetheless today. I'm also a consulting astrologer. That's really what I do. I do these YouTube videos so that you know that I exist, and also so that hopefully you can find something helpful in them. I don't monetize these videos, so it's not my bread and butter. That's for a multitude of reasons, mostly ethical. And therefore, I don't also upload a lot. So if there's a gap, as there has been of almost 2 weeks, it's just because I've been either busy or there's not really much to talk about. I was, however, wanting to do a video on the Mars-Pluto square, which happened last week. And that is an interesting dynamic, and especially geopolitically, it's always a very interesting dynamic. There's no doubt lots to talk about there. But one of the things that really stood out in that time was the fact that most of the countries of the world whose representatives were at the UN General Assembly last week walked out on Benjamin Netanyahu when he was trying to speak at the UN General Assembly. So that for me was very Mars-Pluto square. These are tensions that bring out really deep issues of anger, rage, indignity. These were both in fixed signs, Pluto in Aquarius and Mars in Scorpio. We're still kind of in the ending phase. So Mars is about 5 degrees off that square right now. It's closing out the square. It will soon be sextile as it comes through November, and that will be a different energy altogether. But do pay attention to all the things that have come up over the last week for you, maybe minor or sometimes in some cases major tensions around that time. But notice that these things can come and go because they are a couple of days. These are not really slow-moving transits, especially as Mars is moving quickly right now. So you may have noticed a little hiccup, or you may have noticed something that was frustrating, and maybe in the news noticing certain things as well that jumped out at you politically, especially in the United States. I'm not going to discuss a lot of that today simply because I don't have the time. There's a lot of really interesting astrology around geopolitics, and I will come back and talk more about that. My plan is to do that on Sunday so that I can focus today more on individual astrology or our collective experience around that. So let's come back to today. So I'm recording this on the 1st of October, and later today, or even if it's still on the 2nd of October, you'll be experiencing this Mercury square Jupiter. That's a really interesting dynamic of tension because a square is always tension that requires some kind of adaptation or resolution. Now, it's not a bad one because Jupiter is Jupiter, and it also is it's a lot nicer to have a square with Jupiter than to have a square, say, to Saturn. But there can be a tendency to overdo it with Jupiter. So that is one of the challenges of Jupiter, where it's not always about benefit, but it's about more and expanding into something. And that can be more of whatever is going on. And here in the sign of Cancer, where it's exalted, and it has been there since the 9th of June, it's perhaps more emotional. And there can be a lot of emotional conversations or emotional energy around this time. But also, there's this tension in that square, it's built into the square aspect, which is about this. Mercury being in the air sign, cardinal air, Libra, in a square to this cardinal water, Cancer, can be around this tension of things that are to do with feelings as opposed to social obligations. And we'll talk a bit about that because this moon might also be in relationship to that for some of you. So we do have this sense now, that, especially a heightened sense today, maybe tomorrow again, perhaps already the 30th of September, that there may be a tension around what we feel like we need to do or what we feel instinctively we're drawn towards or intuitively, especially a very Cancerian word, and where there's a feeling of adapting or a need to adapt or a need to compromise, which is the Libra energy. We also have the sun there now, so that becomes even stronger. And so that's an interesting tension that you might need to be reflecting on in your own life. And it's again coming to a place of deciding from where your feelings are. In this case, for example, Jupiter is the stronger of the planets. Mercury is just passing by. Mercury does do a lot of accommodation when it's in Libra. It can often say things because the expectation is to not rock the boat, for example, or to make choices that don't disturb other people's needs. And that can be a positive thing, can be very helpful, but it can also be on a personal level, ignoring your own inner experience or your own intuition. And when we come to the Aries full moon, we'll talk about that. I think it's quite an interesting theme to follow up on this week. So yeah, it's a fleeting thing. It's not a major thing. But if you do have this natally, this can be something that you might want to look into. It wouldn't be necessarily this particular configuration, but anytime you have Jupiter squared by Mercury in your natal chart, there will be this tension around how you feel you need to connect with people or speak or present yourself based on your sense of obligations towards others or whatever the sign that Mercury is in based on that energy. And then the Jupiter, which is about where you want to expand into something that may not be what Mercury is ready to grapple with. Or the other way that this can look is that there's an over-promising and there's a sense of not being entirely sincere in what is promised. And that again boils down to where are you compromising yourself? Because if we're not being sincere about what we say to others, it's because there's a part of us that's choosing to ignore an inner signal, something that's internal to our intuition or our own desire. So look at that in your own life if that's an aspect you have in your chart, and then examine that now. Where am I doing stuff that doesn't really match what I want to do? Where am I compromising in a way that is not working for me? Or where do I need to compromise because I need to find a solution and work my way through this? And we'll look in as we go sign by sign, we'll look in each chart where those tendencies are coming up for the rising, sun rising and moon signs. Right, let's have a look now then at Venus, which is already really in an orb of conjunction, but on the 4th of October, going to be exactly conjoining the South Node. And that's something that's a little bit more exceptional, more rare. So Mercury will square Jupiter usually at least twice a year. Venus meets the South Node usually only once a year, and not always in the same sign. It's not always she's going to be sometimes overlapping signs, and so skipping a sign. So it's once a year, maybe. In some years, it'll be twice a year if it's at the beginning and end of the sign. So Jupiter is sorry, the south node rather is at 18 degrees, 14 minutes of Virgo. Venus is, of course, 18 minutes, 14 minutes of Virgo. And that implies that obviously she's in opposition to the north node. So there's a lot to say already about Venus when she's on the south node. First of all, the fact that she is there with the South Node can mean that there's a tendency to need to separate or leave or move away from all the Venusian things that are represented by that particular place in your chart where we find Virgo. And we'll talk about that again sign by sign. It can be something to do with finances, that's a Venusian thing, or it can be something to do with relationship. And that may be an actual relationship that you're moving away from, or there's a way of being in relationship that you're moving away from. And this can also be that somebody is moving away from you and there's something that is being removed from your experience in this time. So these are very karmic things when planets move to the nodal axis, even when it's not on an eclipse. Um, and keeping in mind, this is where the eclipses are happening for now until next year. We've got the eclipses happening in the Pisces Virgo axis. So it's a big theme in all of our lives. But where Venus is in Virgo, she's considered to be in her fall because she's not in the house of her exaltation, or the sign rather of her exaltation, which is across the way in Pisces. Venus in Pisces is super romantic, extremely sort of idealistic. She falls in love sort of every other week. And Venus in Virgo is a lot more fussy. She's discerning. She has a sense of herself in a way that is much more self-aware, or in a way that has very high standards, for example, where Venus in Pisces is much more forgiving and allowing. Venus in Virgo, if it moves away from this discernment, meaning that I'm self-referential, and here again we're going to come close to that Aries moon theme, the full moon theme. We're looking from a place of what's good for me in this circumstance, and then, therefore how can I be of service to others from this good place that I'm in. Whereas when Venus is not finding herself happy in her own skin, there will be a lot of looking outward, and there'll be a lot of blame and recrimination and judgment. And it can be fussiness and criticism rather than discernment that shows up. So it's just never good enough. And this can also be one of the significators here, where we realize all this dissatisfaction is coming from an inner dissatisfaction. It's a relationship to self. That's always the Venus quality, is what is my relationship to self? And how am I bringing that out into relationships around me? So it can be a really good time to examine that and to let go of any kind of fussiness and criticism of others. Come back to a place of discernment. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? So that you move away from situations that are not good for you. So the other dynamic of this Pisces and Virgo axis is the victim martyr dynamic. Woe is me, I have a horrible partner. That starts to get old at a certain point. So you've got to move on from this horrible partner instead of blaming them for everything that's going wrong. And where that martyring energy can be so strong is where we believe that we don't have a choice. And again, we're going to come back and see the power of choice in the Aries sector of our chart. But realizing that there's a choice means that we have to fully own our experience. We have to own our emotions. We have to realize if we're resenting somebody, or if we're, holding on to some kind of past hurt, that we are unhealed. And this is also the Virgo aspect. So the unhealed Virgo will be the victim, will be the martyr, will be in a place of sacrificing, but with a flavor of needing to be seen to be doing so, as opposed to being in service to others. Or there's this, again, that feeling of being in servitude as opposed to in service. And that's something that where Venus coming along the South Node can really bring things to our attention, and then recognize, okay, I have to take my share of responsibility for this. Keeping in mind that what is ruling this Venus is this Mercury, where Venus and Mercury are still sharing each other's signs. So Mercury is in Venus's sign in Libra, and Venus is in Mercury's sign in Virgo. So they're supporting each other, but they don't really see each other. So it requires a certain amount of navigation, a certain amount of conscious awareness around whatever is going on here. Where am I compromising, thinking I'm doing the right thing, thinking I'm being helpful, but actually what I'm doing is abdicating choice. I'm abdicating my agency, and then blaming the other person for the outcome. So this could be a really good time for you to reflect on that. At this time also, we have Mercury having just completed its opposition to Chiron, which is coming up to a conjunction with Eris, and we'll look at that chart in a moment. That's going to be after the full moon. but significant because that's a rare conjunction. We've already had one both direct at 25 degrees. Now we're having the retrograde at 25 degrees, and we're going to have another pass in the months ahead at 24 degrees. But just to say that this is the Chiron-Eris energy is where we realize that there's an aspect of ourselves that we need to heal in terms of our relationship to ourselves, but which can also be sabotaging ourselves. So, are we sabotaging ourselves? Are we pointing fingers of blame in every direction, but not doing something that's from our own capacity, our own agency? Eris has a lot to do with hypocrisy and pointing out hypocrisy where things are not showing up in a correct way. But it also means that we have to look at our own hypocritical tendencies as well. And again, if we've got that Mercury ruled by Venus, we can use that opportunity to actually constructively sit down and talk about things. If we're mature about it, we can really look at things in a way that can bring good qualitative discussions and results wherever compromise might be needed. But most importantly, to come to this place of understanding our own role in all of these dynamics around relationship. And by the way, when I say relationship, think about the broader picture of relationship. So it's you in relationship to yourself, you in relationship to your life partner, but in terms of general relationships of all types, it's just you in relationship to relationship. And how does that transpire? Is it very different in your, let's say, romantic life compared to in your professional life? And of course, that's naturally, it will be somewhat different, but there should be a certain amount of integrity behind all of that, that we rely on, that we work with, that is the pillar that we rely on in any circumstance. So an interesting time indeed this whole week, but especially exact on Saturday, the 4th of October, when Venus meets up with the South Node. Um, so another aspect of this is that, as I said, it can be about letting go, both the Chiron Eris in Aries, this notion of self-sabotage, or where I have held on to a self-doubt or a self-belief that's really limiting. And equally with the Venus, where have I been playing a role of martyr, or where am I martyring and, making a martyr of my partner? Where do I need to pull back on criticism and judgment and blaming? Where can I be more discerning and take responsibility for the partner I've chosen? And again, if it's a some kind of commercial imperative or financial imperative, it's also a Venusian thing, then that applies to that as well. Where am I not managing my money properly, for example? Where do I need to change my money management? And just as an example, this whole week, a lot of the reasons I haven't had time for this video, which I've been trying to do for 3 days, is because I've been setting up a business and trying to reorganize the way I work, because I've been working as a freelancer for many, many years, and I need to restructure that so I can not be completely wiped out by taxes, which is a different tax structure when you restructure yourself as a business. So things like that might be really important for you right now, to look at different ways of restructuring your finances, restructuring your relationships, restructuring expectations around all of that, and also being prepared for things to be released from your life. This is the truth of life itself, is that we sometimes are surprised, especially with the nodal axis. We're surprised by what happens to us or through us in life in ways that we didn't anticipate or expect. Although sometimes in retrospect we look and we say, yeah, that was definitely going to happen. But let's say you didn't see it coming, and you might be the one who is left behind. It's not always about us walking away proudly from a relationship, but it can also be the reverse. And so recognizing the karmic nature of the South Node, which is the Ketu Venus, and recognizing that what is happening here is inevitable. It has to happen. And this is especially true if you have that sort of, let's call it 16 to 20 degrees of Virgo, or Pisces for that matter, or Gemini or Sagittarius, which would be in a square to this. As you know, from September, those eclipse phases that we're still just moving away. This is the first days of moving out of the eclipse lunar cycle. We're still in these energies quite strongly. So the chaos or the shifting, the changes, the goodbyes and the hellos that happen throughout September, they're still being figured out here. And this astrology is, I think, quite helpful just in terms of how things are coming together as we get closer to this Aries full moon. So, and don't fear it. When I say karmic, it doesn't always mean bad things. Karma is whatever it is. In the Indian sense, you have the notion of punya, which is good karma. It's what you have earned, the merit that you have accumulated either through this lifetime or other lifetimes, and that is what needs to happen to fulfill this particular lifetime. But there's also papa, which papa is the negative karma or the results of negative actions. So again, it's not punishment, it's about consequences of things that have happened in the past. So all of these things are, if we're living mindfully and in awareness, we see why things are happening and we can accept that. We can accept this is what it is and move on. And actually, with Jupiter in Cancer, we're really lucky to have this energy at this time because it's helping us find grace in some really dodgy, really edgy energy that we're going through in this year. So let's have a look now then at this full moon. We go into the full moon. There we go. So the Aries full moon, as I mentioned earlier, is on the 7th of October. That's overnight on the 7th, Universal Time. And then for many people, it will be in North America, South America will be on the 6th. Everybody else, it's on the 7th. And so here we're looking at almost, well, just 14 degrees of Aries plus 8 arc minutes of a degree. And this lunation is, of course, it's an opposition because that's a full moon. It's always opposed to the sun. So here we have the sun at 14 degrees of Libra. Venus is still in that conjunction, but it's now what we call a separating conjunction. So she's still very much in orb of that. It's just a little bit less than 3.5 degrees, still impactful, let's say. So again, this carries through several days on either side. But now Venus is not getting the support from Mercury that she was getting before because Mercury has just moved into Mars's sign, and Mars is also the ruler of this moon. And so Mars is in Scorpio, and that has been about a week now that Mars has been there. So it's part of this bigger shift of energy that happened just after the last eclipse and a lot of sign changes. So it's more than a week, actually. It's more almost like 2 weeks since the eclipse of the 21st of September. And now Mars is in its own sign, which makes Mars extremely powerful. And it's a fixed water sign, Scorpio. And as it's ruling the cardinal fire sign of Aries, we're going to get a little more stability than we might otherwise, but it also can come from a need to really go deep and think about our motivations, think about strategic planning. So think about Mars in Scorpio representing the as the scorpion lurks in the dark. It's sort of strategizing which ankle to bite as it passes by, and you never quite know with a Mars in Scorpio when they will lash out. Unlike the Aries Mars, which is full frontal and right in your face, where you see the enemy coming. With the Mars in Scorpio, you don't see the enemy coming, and so that's why there's sometimes an uneasy feeling around the energy of Scorpio. It can be incredibly profound, super dynamic from under the depths of the water, let's say. So you know something's happening. It's just that you don't know when and how it's all going to manifest. So this is the Mars that's ruling both Mercury at this time, therefore ruling this Venus and South Node, and also the Mars that's ruling this full moon in Aries. And of course, the lunation itself is ruling Jupiter. So also really important as Jupiter is now starting to approach, but won't get there for a few days, approach the square to Chiron and Eris. And that's part of a bigger story of the square that Jupiter is going to hold throughout pretty much the month of November and into December with Saturn, when Saturn finally backs into 25 degrees, and it will station there at the end of November. So we're looking at a lot of dynamism that is actually slowly putting itself in place. And it's a slow feeling of there's change coming, and yet we don't know exactly how. And this is why I think it's helpful for us to have a fixed Mars that's very strong, ruling this otherwise quite impulsive Aries full moon, because we can act on impulse in ways that we might regret later, or we might realize, oh, wait, I should have had more information. And we will have a little bit more of a sense of being able to wait with Mercury in fixed water, with Mars in fixed water, and both of them participating, let's say, in both lunation as well as Venus on the south node. So um, if we think about this in terms of dates, it can be really interesting for you to look at the past year and a half and the year and a half to come, because this is a culmination of a phase of a lunar family or a lunar cycle that began 18 months ago. And so this was actually the Aries solar eclipse. That was a new moon solar eclipse on the 8th of April, 2024. That was quite a big deal, that 8th of April 2024. And that energy was at 19 degrees of Aries, 19 Aries, 24 arc minutes of Aries. And so that's something to reflect on as well. Where was I on the 8th of April, 2024? What was going on there? And again, because it was an eclipse, that's quite a substantial, quite a big deal. So there's something significant that started around that time. Something significant happened to either through you or in the world around you that required some adjustment, some change, a new beginning around things. And and this is now the culmination of that. So, where we came through the first quarter of that cycle, the first quarter moon was at 16 degrees of Aries and 55 arc minutes, and that was on the 6th of January 2025. And then so now we're at the full moon phase here at that 14 degrees, 8 minutes of Aries on the 7th of October. And then on the 7th of July, 2026, then we have the third quarter or the closing square, 7th of July, 2026 at 15 degrees, 41 minutes of Aries. So you notice that these are all within a degree before or after this lunation. So these are how the lunar families are established. And if you want to learn more about those, I have a whole video. I always place links to things that are relevant in the description box below this video. Just click on more and you'll find information below this video, including how to reach out to me if you want to have a session with me or work with me. I've just finished also an intermediate astrology course, which was just fabulous. We had an absolutely amazing group. And I'll definitely do that again, but it will be starting in 2026. I won't be able to do it before the end of this year. But it's a great course, really fabulous to look at everybody's charts and learn from them. And if you're interested in learning more and you're at the intermediate level, we'll do that. The beginner's course, by the way, is going to be out at the end of October. And that you will be able to follow along at your own pace. And then there will be sessions where we meet live in between. So right, that's that. So we're coming back now to the Aries lunation, and if we go forward in time, so when we complete this cycle, we're going to go forward to the 6th of April, 2027, and that will be where the new moon is going to be at 16 degrees and 56 arc minutes of Aries. So that new moon, April 6th, 2027, which is basically around midnight, so it actually will end up being kind of like the 7th for many people. That's the end of this cycle that we're in. So if you like to work with the lunations, which I really recommend that you do because they're one of the most predictable cycles and they're really helpful. We all can relate to our, luminaries. We relate very easily to the sun and moon. This is a good way of looking at that. So checking those dates, I'll put those dates in the description box as well, and then you can track them. You can write down in your journal or track in a calendar what's going on around this time, and then see how the flow is developing. And especially because we're looking at eclipses around this time, this is something that will have an extra oomph, an extra impact. And since this is related to the eclipse, it's something to check with yourself. Where am I in relationship to what happened back on April 8th, 2024? So Aries is really all about the personal will and desire. What do I want? How do I want to manifest things? How do I want to reach into life? It's the inspiration of the fire signs, and it's cardinal fire. So it's very super self-aware, super self-centered, potentially, certainly the most self-referential of all of the fire signs, which tend anyway to be quite self-referential. And it's this way of showing up in life that is inspired or instinctual. It's a gut instinct. Let's just do this thing. Let's run in and grab that child out of the burning building kind of thing. This is the Aries energy. It's just do it first and think about it later. That can be good or bad. This impulsiveness can be a problem. It can be difficult. Again, too much self-reference can be problematic, especially for others who are kind of waiting for you to stop talking about yourself or whatever. With a lot of Aries, people will often center themselves in their conversations. And especially with the Aries moon, their feelings will come out raw and immediate and sort of bark out at you, boss you around. And then 2 seconds later, they don't remember that that was what it was like, because of course it's very subjective. The moon is very subjective. They won't necessarily realize that they had such an impact on you, or that they maybe even hurt you. And then they'll be wondering, why are you upset? And they've moved on, because it's Aries. It moves fast. Mars in Aries is the daytime Mars. It's busy. It's got stuff to do. What do you mean you're angry at me for 10 minutes ago? So this is the kind of quality that we can actually use consciously to refresh ourselves and say, well, what do I need, and how do I need to move in a new direction? This is cardinal energy. It begins new things. It's a fresh start. Um, and like for me, for example, it's always been super important for me to live my own way. And it took me a long time to feel okay with that, because often I was feeling like there must be something wrong with me, because I don't want to be like everybody else, and I don't want to fit in. I don't feel like I fit in. And it wasn't that I was antisocial. I could be very social, um, and always friendly, generally speaking, friendly with people. But I wasn't happy, That's part of I had Jupiter in Gemini, so I can be very chatty. I have my Venus in Aquarius, so I'm quite social. I can be really chatty with people, but my inner experience doesn't actually want to be there. I don't want to do this thing. And so although I feel like I've been strongly guided by my own standards and priorities, it took me pretty much until my first Saturn return, so sort of 26, 27, 28 years old, before I realized I don't want to do these things. I don't want to go this way. And I invite you to reflect on your own experience of life, wherever you are right now, and especially with reference to the last 18 months or maybe your whole life, and look at what you're realizing about your choices, in the direction of what you personally need and what you personally want out of life. So, I spent so long trying to fit in to what people call a normal life, and just never fit in. And I always felt so kind of out of place. I always just felt like something must be wrong with me, because I'm not feeling the vibe of wanting to go out and do all those things that everybody seemed to always want to chase after. And I became really exhausted, just exhausted. This is again, if we go back to the Jupiter being squared by Mercury, it's like, where am I people pleasing? But my deeper instinct or my deeper energy says, I don't want this. I want something different. I want something more out of my life than just this. So use this opportunity, especially as we've come out of the eclipses, and this is the first lunation that isn't affected by the eclipses, except that it's the peak of the eclipse that happened in Aries, 19 degrees of Aries in April 2024. 8th of April. And you can think of that as the larger arc of movement in the direction towards what you need and how you need to express yourself. And rather than wasting your time on everybody else's plans for your for your life. And really, for me, it became crystal clear because two really major events in my life um, just basically took me away from this need to constantly compromise what seemed to be like endlessly making other people feel comfortable around how I would show up. Would I drink? Would I not drink? Would I eat meat? Would I not eat meat? All these things, it just became so clear after I nearly died due to medical malpractice when I was 35. And and then 4 years later, my baby son died after barely 3 days, and those moments just really jarred me into this place of okay, all of this spiritual practice that I've been working on for the past sort of 15 years or so just has to mean something now. It has to serve me, or else it's all wasted. It's all just blah blah, and there's nothing happening underneath the surface. So that's where, sort of the rubber hits the road at a certain point. You realize life is precious and it's short, and we're on a kind of a razor's edge. So this is Aries, this is this moment. And what am I going to do with this one precious life, this precious moment? And so, however long you end up living, life will always feel like a blur. It's always going to feel like there's just not enough time. And so, especially so if you haven't accomplished what you feel is important to you. So, this is the week, this is the moment where you can really think, okay, there's all of these shifts going around collectively that are causing us to have to adapt to a rapidly changing scenario. We have to figure out, what do I want in this? Why would I waste my time, I don't know, like watching daytime TV, whatever, whatever you watch, whatever you're wasting your time on. It's not necessarily that, but whatever, getting your nails done or whatever the thing is. Just, is this what you need to do? Is this the thing that you need to do? And again, that Venus conjunct Ketu is the most perfect opportunity to make this conscious choice to move away from what is superficial and short term and the pleasures and the things that feel frivolous. And it's not to say that we can't have these lovely, fun things and nice things and pleasurable things as well. But if that becomes the mainstay and that is the go-to to make you feel better or to numb what otherwise feels like an empty space or an emptiness in life, then move on to focus your attention on creating a more meaningful life. Your life has meaning that's inherent to the fact that you're breathing right now. It's not about a job, it's not about the thing that you do. It's a meaningful life because you have chosen in every moment to be awake and alive to what this moment requires from you. So many times people come to me and they're like, what's my purpose? I need you to tell me what my purpose is. And they might be in their 50s or 60s. And the only reason they don't know what their purpose is because they haven't been putting attention on themselves in an internal way, listening to their heart, listening to their gut instinct and operating from that. And when you do that, you're guided to the thing that you need to do, which is rarely a job, by the way. The meaning and purpose that we want out of life often, for many people, means that it's going to be how I earn a living. But for the vast majority of people, it's not that. It's just how you're engaging every day. So don't tie yourself down to, this me having to show up in a particular job. But, what can you take away? Actually, with Venus on the South Node, it's about what can I let go of? What can I strip away? And what desires are, and that's Venus, the desire nature. Mars and Venus are very much about our desire natures, different ways, preferences, especially with reference to Venus. And what are those desires or those that need for comfort, maybe the need for something pleasant and secure that feels somehow safe? What is actually distracting me from being more fulfilled? What can I let go of? This is the South Node, just cut away. The South Node has the quality of Mars, and the North Node has the quality of Saturn. It's what I'm building and constructing, what I'm moving towards. And it's that, again, that karma that's the buck stops here. It has to be like this. So where can I let go of these things that are really taking me off my path? And that, for the most part, that's why people feel deeply confused about their purpose, their path in life. So Aries, in a healthy way, the expression of Aries is more like an enlightened self-interest, and it brings more benefit to others, actually. So where there's a tendency, there can be a tendency to be self-focused or selfish. Obviously, that's not really helpful for others, and it tends to push people away. This is the razor's edge of Mars, which is about separating. So there's the Mars in Scorpio feels a little bit edgy and a little bit menacing in some cases, depending on how that's used, especially when it's squaring Pluto. But the Mars in Aries is about I go my way, you do you, I'll go my way, and that can be it can be just difficult in relationship because there's too much of that me and the my way and the thing I want. Whereas if it's an enlightened self-interest that says, I know what I need to do, I know which path I need to walk because I'm connected to who I am. I'm connected to my self, my instinctive self, and I know which way to walk. Well, then the Aries becomes really powerful as a leader, showing the way, or as the one who is participating but doesn't collapse into a collective identity, for example. Doesn't mean you have to be uniquely isolated. It just means that you're not collapsing into a bigger identity. And we need that right now. We need for people to be really aware of what's happening to them as opposed to waiting for the collective or waiting for some hierarchy to tell them what to do. And this is where the Aries strikes out and lashes out of fear. So that's enlightened self-interest. Like I said, it can really be helpful for other people. It can be like you're so clear and you're so nourished that you actually bring, so you bring people to their own self-awareness. This is the ideal, let's say. So what you can try, especially around this full moon is a great time to do things like where you start to commit to something, you realize something has run its course, or you're realizing an aspect of yourself, or you're realizing whatever's going on in that Aries part of your chart, and now you're committing. This is something where you can say, okay, I understand this. So therefore, if we think about for the cycle that's going to close out in 18 months, you can say, well, between now and 18 months from now, I'm going to focus my energy on this aspect of my life and try to come to a point of completion by April of 2027. And that's just one way to do it. You can also think in a more short term. You can think of this as a lunar month. So that would be by sort of the second week of October, sorry, the second week of November when we have our next full moon. And you can say, well, now this is what I want to see in this cycle. Or you can do it even by the next new moon. So 2 weeks from now, on the 21st of October, we have the new moon that's coming up at the end of Libra, which I'll come to talk about in another video. So you can break down the cycles in different ways. Um, and even going 6 months ahead, if you go into the spring of 2026, you can look at that. It won't be part of the same lunar family, but it's still the same lunation where you find then a new moon in Aries. And you can think about that. So you use the timing that works for you. And then you might like to make a note so you can write everything down. What do I want to accomplish? And you can think in terms of the arc of your whole life. Before I draw my last breath, what do I want to accomplish? And what do I want to experience in my life? That's Aries, the experience of life. The visceral Aries is like the toddler of the zodiac. It sort of pops out of the womb and it's like, here I am, and let me touch and put this in my mouth and go over here and reach down and, grab the dog's tail or whatever. And this is the energy of experiencing life, fully embracing that. What do I want to experience in life? Or let's imagine I can't feel what I want to experience. I can't even taste and sense what would be of interest for me right now. And then the question is, what do I need to do to get myself out of this place? Because then I'm not living, I'm just surviving. And that's not where we want to live from. It's not necessary, and that can require some assistance from other people, some assistance from change of lifestyle, and that's also very Virgo. The Venus on South Node can be a recognition where there's too much self-indulgence that's actually not helpful for your health. Um, a little bowl of ice cream every now and then, but if you're eating a tub of Ben and Jerry's every day, there's something seriously wrong. So, these kinds of things you can look at. And so you can do that, like, for example, on a column, you just take a blank page, a piece of paper, and you just make a column on the left side and you write everything down. These are the things that I want out of my life. These are the experiences I want to feel in my life. And again, if it feels too intimidating to go through your whole arc of life or even the 18 months ahead, just keep it short and say, okay, within 2 weeks or within a month, this is what I want. And then on the right side, write down everything you're currently doing, like not what you will do, because that's a bit of a cheat. So it's not what you would like to be doing. It's not what you're pretending to everybody else that you're doing, but actually brutally honest. This is Aries, remember, brutally honest, right in your face. Write down everything you're currently doing to make that happen. And then notice between the things that you want and the things you actually do with your time every single day, like you could use the last couple of days as a reference, or even just the day you're doing that, is what I'm doing actually going to take me closer to the thing that I want, or the activities I want to experience, or the way I want to experience my life, or is it taking me away from that? And just realize where there's some kind of disconnect there. They're not aligned at all, which means that there's a misalignment within you. And that's also where Aries and the moon representing the mind, the body in Aries can really sharpen the focus on how do I stay in alignment with myself? And that's the Mars really strong in Scorpio right now. Take no prisoners. Just wrestle yourself to the ground and say, every day, we're going to do this thing. And that thing will take us closer to the thing that we say we want. So this is no more wishy-washy, no more victim martyr stuff. Remember, that's the South Node in Virgo. Stop playing the damsel in distress. Stop playing the victim who says, I have no choice, and realize that everything you do is a choice. That's a very important thing to understand. Um, and then if you discover, for example, that you're completely out of step with your vision or your life or the things that you want, and your daily or your regular activity, again, Virgo is not in alignment with that, then write down all the things that are wasting your time and energy. So don't go to the things that you'd like to see happen, but again, be brutally honest. We're talking Mars in Scorpio here, with a moon ruled by that. Mars in Aries, and you're going to really hold yourself to account and say, I'm sitting around watching TV. I'm hanging out in cafes, talking to my friends. I'm whatever the thing is. I'm lounging around, moping around the house or whatever. I don't get dressed. I remember an interview from a journalist to Hemingway, and he asked him, "Do you have any tips for young writers?" And, and Hemingway's response was, "Get dressed every morning." And I mean, honestly, it sounds flippant, but there's nothing more powerful than the statement that says, I am not going to allow myself to lurk in the shadows and lounge around on the sofa, or I'm going to, this is very Virgo, I'm going to purify myself. I'm going to cleanse my body. I'm going to do that for myself as well as for others, so that I'm not going to walk around like some hobo in the field of society and feel bad for myself or make other people feel uncomfortable because I'm not respecting myself. And that's what makes people uncomfortable. And so all of these things, simple, simple things. So you don't have to, go out and wrestle lions, but you just go have a shower every day. Get up, clean your body, purify your body. That goes a long way to purifying your mind and changing your energy. Water changes your energy. So then later, after you've done this process of really looking hard at what you're going to do, then you write down, how am I going to make this happen? And what do I need to do? In fact, that makes me think I'm actually going to attach a questionnaire in the description below here that I used to use in a course that I would offer called Aligned with Purpose. And remember, spoiler alert, there is no purpose to life. You invent that, you create that yourself. But anyway, we took a whole course to do that. And I might actually bring that course back because it's fascinating. We looked at the 12 houses of astrology and how we could work with each of those but going through as a life sort of global self-development course. Anyway, that's for 2026, not for now. But I will put that in, it's a Google document, so you can download it from Google and write down all those different answers to the question, and then maybe as a complement to what this moon is bringing up, add more things. So you can just start to forecast and channel that Mars energy so it doesn't get dispersed. One of the problems of Aries is that it can be kind of jumping around into new things, and then there's this thing, and there's a new restaurant opening, and I have to get the latest iPhone, and I have to have all these new things. But it means that there's never anything fully accomplished. It feels like there's always this chasing, running after something. So just to keep yourself in focus, it can really help to see where you're losing focus. And not as a way of beating yourself up at all. It's about recognizing, okay, this is where we have to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and say, I do have capacity. I exist, I'm breathing, and therefore I am worthy. And I'm worthy certainly of putting some attention on how I want my life to feel. So, again, with that Venus Ketu, a lot of the most effective things that will be helping us here is to be letting go of habits, letting go of comforts, letting go of relationships that are dragging you down or making you do things that are not in alignment with what you want to feel in your life. So it doesn't have to be about adding new stuff. It's certainly about that purification process is often about letting go or subtracting things. And Aries is all about having a goal. Mars is about willpower. How do you use your willpower? And this can be especially where you take advantage of this Mars in this fixed water energy of Scorpio. Until the early part of November, we've got these weeks and weeks to work with this energy. Use it to focus and commit to just maybe 3 goals or 4 goals, and specific goals like targets with objectives. I'm going to do this thing and try and create a date and hold yourself to that. And you'll see that all of a sudden, what felt like I don't understand why I'm here. I don't know what my purpose is. Woe is me. You'll start to realize, oh wait, I can do a lot here with this life. And again, keeping in mind, this has nothing to do with being famous or having to have a huge income. None of those things. We shouldn't be chasing around the externalities. We shouldn't be chasing around these things that, of course, we can have a goal to be abundant and have a certain amount of money or whatever to make life easier. But if that is the goal, you will find yourself just as empty when you've achieved that goal as you're going towards it. And that will be why you don't feel you connect to your purpose. So if you're just living your purpose day to day, then you'll achieve all kinds of goals that you hadn't realized that you were even interested in. And you'll just find your life much more abundant and rich in ways that you hadn't anticipated. Um, for example, here, I'm not monetizing this video. I don't monetize my YouTube channel at all. And so I really don't care how, many clicks or likes or whatever. It's just that it does help the video be seen because that's the way the algorithm works. But I'm not chasing likes. I'm not trying to grow my channel because I'm earning income from advertising revenue. So my goal with the channel is different. My goal with the channel is to publish what I do, to make people aware that I'm here, hopefully to help people as I'm doing that. And when that's the focus, then there's a whole different thing that happens. There's a whole different energy that goes into what you're doing. And so it's that Virgo energy, that Pisces Virgo axis, which is to be helpful, to be constructive, to be useful. And with the Jupiter in Cancer, same energy, but in a slightly different way, which is much more about the care and nurturing that also has to go both ways for self and for others. We're coming up on a really wonderful period of a couple of months here where Jupiter trining Saturn, I'll do a separate video on that, is going to allow us some really strong potential for long-term planning, for making things concrete, making goals come alive. And that's why it's really good right now to focus on what those should be or what that might feel like, especially because when Mars moves into that 24-25 degree part of Scorpio, towards the third week of October, again, I'll do another video on that. That is going to be a groundwater trine that is incredibly impactful because Jupiter will be in its greatest dignity. Mars is at home, and Saturn is very strong in retrograde, slowly stationing, and that makes an incredibly good placement because Saturn is ruled by an exalted Jupiter as it's doing that. So we're in for some weeks where we can really work with this energy, and that climate also can be applied to, the greater community as well. There's an opportunity to really work with this energy. I think I'm going to leave the Chiron-Eris for another video, but I did mention that this is a rare conjunction. We did have it in 1971. So if you were born in 1971, you will have a Chiron-Eris conjunction. I think it's around 10, 11 degrees at that point. And that's something that is quite life-changing. It happens only every few centuries. So this is quite rare. Here, this Chiron and Eris connection, in Aries, is again another way of looking at how new the era we're in actually is. And since we have Pluto in this trine, it's still very, very strongly in a trine with Uranus, although that only perfects in 2026. But still, the Pluto trining Uranus is really, really tight still at this time. And that's a part of the signature of the 60s where Pluto Uranus were conjoined. And if you were born in late 65 or early 66, like I was, that's part of our natal signature. And that was in Virgo. And that, in fact, is about the degree that the South Node is in now. So that was happening anywhere between sort of 15 and 18 degrees of Virgo, maybe up to 19, certainly 15, let's say, to 19 degrees of Virgo. And that was when they came together in the conjunction, and now we're here in this trine that is a part of their bigger cycle. So lots of interesting dynamics that reflect back on the revolutionary or highly socially impactful times of the 60s. And then, of course, the 70s is actually when the 60s actually happened. So we're talking Chiron and Eris and how that influenced our society as a whole and the trajectory we're on right now. The early 70s, when Chiron and Eris came together, was, for example, when Nixon decided to go and open up to China, realizing that the US was not in as good financial shape as it could have been. So it actually needed to work with China. And equally, what else? Yeah, that's the 73 was the Yom Kippur War, the Arab-Israeli War. That would also be linked to this kind of energy. That was still when the conjunction was still coming back and forth. And 69 was another Arab-Israeli war. So there's a lot of that kind of energy that's coming back right now in a very new way. Right. So we're going to move through this now sign by sign, and I will come back and speak more about this Eris Chiron. Maybe what I'd like to do, if we can, I'm going to just try and find the UK here. I'm not going to talk a lot about global events, but I just wanted to point out because the UK is going through massive, massive change at this moment. And for this, I think I better put in the ascendant, descendant, midheaven IC axis. So here for the United Kingdom, we'll put it on the inside, and that means the Aries full moon is on the outside. I just want to point out that the lunation here is on the nodal axis of the UK to within 4 arc minutes, which is pretty rare. These kinds of exact dynamics are pretty rare. And at the same time, we have Mars by transit in opposition, and it's applying to an opposition, which makes it very strong. The application of an aspect, or the building up, let's say, of an aspect is always when it's at its stronger point and more influential point, and when it's separating, once the aspect has perfected and moved beyond that point of the degree point of perfection, it just tends to slowly weaken. The product or the result is more evident, and then it's still applying, but I mean, it's still in effect, but it's not as strong. So we're at the time of the Aries full moon in a Mars opposition. in the UK, second and eighth axis, which is about money and about, so here we have Mars in the eighth house. Mars, it's in very poor dignity for the UK. It's in the eighth house, first of all, and it's ruled by Venus, so it's in its detriment, and it's in the eighth house of secrets. And this is where, if we think about the expression perfidious Albion, which basically means they're all bloody liars, the British will commit to something and then betray their commitments. And here we're seeing that playing out daily in Palestine and so many other places, including Yemen and so on. All of this to say that something is going to happen around this time that will possibly be about finances or about the economy for the UK. And there can be something that is very, very impactful in terms of dynamic relationships with opponents or enemies. That's the seventh house, which is where we also find this Chiron-Eris, and that Chiron-Eris is in a trine to Saturn, which is again in poor dignity. It's a Saturn in Leo retrograding at 23 degrees. So this Chiron-Eris by 2026 will be at, in their perfected conjunction again, will be at 24 degrees. So even more tightly trining that Saturn. So lots of potential for big change. And the last 2 years have brought Pluto in opposition to the Jupiter that's in Leo, again retrograde for them in the 11th house. That 11th house has a lot to do with legal issues, with the legislature, with the way that government manifests. That's also diplomatic agreements. Again, notice that Saturn is in, it's in detriment. And this is also the ruler of the sun, which is on the IC, so hit in the hidden part of the chart for the UK, fourth house. And so again, it's this dynamic of, as I mentioned, perfidious Albion, where they don't necessarily adhere to the agreements, or the agreements are not what they appear to be. There's some other motive going on here. There's perhaps some revelation. This is also part of the dynamic here now of Mercury squaring Pluto, which is also, I forgot to mention that in the full moon video, but Mercury is squaring Pluto. And so there can be some revelation, some secrets that come out, and especially for the UK. That can be for all of us, but especially for the UK. Secrets coming out. Certainly, there's a major issue of leadership there. We have Jupiter going through the 10th house, which is about the image of the country and the image of the government. The first house is how the country shows up. And again, we've got South Node and Uranus on the first house, in first house ascendant in Libra, ruled by this Venus, in the fifth, ruled by this undignified Saturn. So some really interesting challenges that are natal to or at least, originating in this chart. And so there's a time here where we might start to realize there's some big secrets that are coming out about finances, about things that have to do with the military. The fifth house and sixth house both connect to military. There is maybe something there again that is to be revealed. And this is part of the bigger dynamic of again, for 2 years, the opposition of Pluto with Jupiter, and that's carrying on in the trine with Uranus. So we're going to get that trine perfected again in the months ahead as Pluto moves back into the second degree over the winter and in direct motion. We've seen this over the last 2 years. So that's been part of the story for the UK over the last 2 years. And why I'm emphasizing this is not just because many of the viewers, many of you watching are in the UK, but also because the UK is so deeply involved in what is going on in the Middle East, in what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. And that will have consequences. So this is part of the bigger story here of Neptune opposing Uranus, then again later for the second time in 2026, February, March, April, Saturn will be opposing Uranus. And that's also part of the bigger grand trine that we find here. There's a grand air trine that the UK has been grappling with since July. Some really major change here that will affect the UK directly and will affect alliances, will affect their, their capacity as well, their capacity to rule, or their capacity to sustain these wars that they've got themselves involved in. Exposing secrets, that's also potentially 12th house with Venus on the South Node, ruled by this Mercury, which is squaring Pluto. So again, this can be a very interesting time. Pay attention around the time of this full moon, but not just, because these are slower moving planets as well. They'll be triggered really powerfully by this full moon, but that triggering, remember, can have an impact for another 18 months because it's revealing something now. This is the revelation of some way of engaging with enemies or engaging with people in general, countries, of course, because we're talking about a country. And so revelations around this in multiple different ways are showing up for the UK. Right. Yeah, and I'll come back to the Mercury squaring Pluto in the sign by signs. So just so we can go sign by sign, and I'm going to then lose the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and IC, because that won't matter for us as we go through the signs. So let's check this out. I'm going to go hour by hour so I can move the clock face. So for those of you who noticed that this is a 14-degree, 8-minute lunation, Aries to Libra, notice that when I move the chart around, when I move the wheel around, I'm trying to get the different ascendants in the first house. And that's going to change the degree of the moon. It's not because we don't know that the moon is at this degree. It's because when I move the wheel, it changes the degree of the moon. It's a fast-moving, one of the fastest moving objects in the sky, and the moon changes rapidly. Notice there we've already moved just 1 hour and it's changed a degree. So here we go. We're going to take Aries all the way back to the ascendant. That changes the date too. Ignore the date. We're just trying to get Aries on the ascendant. All right, so this is the Aries full moon, but only because we're looking at the Aries sun, moon, or ascendant. And again, you'll find the description below about why you should follow for all three. There, it's really helpful to look at all three. And of course, this is general astrology. I cannot see your chart. And although you may have one point of those three in Aries, you may have a ton of things in another sign, and that will distort the reading. So the only way to be sure is to have a personal reading. So pony up and get a reading with me. If you say it doesn't resonate with you, it's because your chart is not heavily loaded in Aries, for example. Or get a reading with anybody, but just look at your chart specifically. I'm using the tropical whole sign system. The whole sign system works not only because we're going sign by sign, but it works. And when I do an individual chart, I will also look at the whole sign system where we do keep the ascendant, midheaven, the IC, and the descendant, and we use those by degree as opposed to starting the quadrant houses as we find in a system like Placidus. All right, so if you're in doubt, you can look at my video about that. I will also attach that below here, where we talk about the differences between the house systems. And if you're in doubt about the method, you can read some of my feedback from clients, and I can put that link down there too, my Google reviews that help people see their chart in ways they've never seen before. Right, back to Aries. So for Aries, of course, this is quite important. This is your full moon, and this is an opportunity for you to really look under the hood and have a look at all of these different aspects of your life and how you want to feel your way forward into the next period of time. Observe yourself around this period of time and how you might have been affected by the eclipses, how those things have changed you in different ways. The 21st of September eclipse was in your 6th house, where we still find the Venus on the South Node. And what that means is there seems to be a lot of change around issues to do with health, issues to do with everyday work or your health habits. Listen to the introduction in particular. This will be much more interesting because I'm going to be basically repeating myself. So go back to that introduction if you haven't already heard it, and that's all about you, Aries. The other thing to note is that you have this really helpful Mars in Scorpio. The one thing is that it's in the 8th house, which can be challenging. So 6th house, 8th house, 12th house are more challenging houses. Even the 4th house, to a certain extent, that's about endings. These are hidden parts of our chart in ways that are sometimes causing difficulties. It's things that are going on behind the scenes, or things that are going on in our unconscious mind, or our psychological nature, or in the intimacy of a relationship or a family dynamic, that can cause a little bit of disruption. So for you, Aries, you really want to start to think about, how do I go my way and make that work for my relationships? You've got the sun in the seventh house, so there's a lot of focus on your relationships. The sun is your exaltation ruler, and it's there in the seventh, but it's a little bit weakened in the seventh. So it's you're the one that's calling the shots, and the ruler of the moon is in your fourth house, angular to you. It's a very exalted, happy Jupiter, and so you're calling the shots, and it can be a really good time to feel, without guilt, find your happy place and recognize, there's nothing wrong in terms of being an Aries. It's that you're here to be that. You're here to express yourself uniquely. You're here to be a leader in some way, shape, or form, and you're here to show up uniquely as yourself. So this is something you can really mull over at this time and reflect on, where do I need to change my day-to-day habits? Where do I need to work through things that might have been painful, or difficulties that I have in intimacy, or challenges that I'm having with money, maybe resources that I have to share with other people, that might be affecting your overall mental health even, but it looks like there's a lot of support for you in terms of working through things. It's partly going to be from letting go of different ways of being in your day-to-day life, or in terms of the dynamic around your maybe sacrificing something of yourself and then resenting that, or feeling like you shouldn't and realizing, actually I should. Maybe I should be a little bit more self-sacrificial, because that, what we're doing here with the Aries moon, is looking at oneself and just observing and what's going on with me in this Aries first house energy, and recognizing that there's something I need to acknowledge about myself. And that doesn't mean that you necessarily should keep going in the direction you're going. It might be a course change, or it might be that you're really on track and that you should keep going, and you just now feel yourself getting more confidence around that. Mercury is squaring Pluto, and it's squaring Pluto from the eighth house to the 11th house. So there's maybe something to do with money specifically, or engagements of some kind with people, that have you having to look at how you share resources, or how you even share information. This can be a revelation of information, and that revelation can be connecting you to society at large, because you also have Neptune, and just recently Saturn, and again you'll have Neptune, Saturn at the Aries point, at the 0 degree point of your sign. And especially if you have up to 1 degree of Aries, generally speaking, it's the 29th degree of Pisces, or what's technically the 30th degree, so from 29 to the very end of Pisces, and then from 0 to 1 degree of Aries, that's the Aries point. Some people stretch that another degree on either side. I think that is a bit of a stretch, so you're not necessarily going to see those results in terms of the mixing and blending of your life with the life of the public, natally, in terms of, how you might be either specifically affected by world events, or you creating and causing some things in going on in the world that you can personally be acknowledged for. So this is another part of this phase of awareness of self. What role am I playing in this bigger world? Um, is it supportive? Is it not? Is it working for me? Is it working for others? So much is changing in Aries energy in 2025, 6, and then just into 7, before you get Chiron moving out of your house, and then Saturn, of course, stays with Neptune for longer. Saturn will be in your first house from February 2026 until February 2028. So you're in it for the long haul here in terms of changing, and this could be a really good time to look at that and do a course correction and say, okay, based on everything that I said in the introduction, how do I want to go forward? So good luck with this, Aries. It's an exciting time to be an Aries right now. I'll see you in the next video. Taurus, this moon, moon being your exaltation ruler, is in the 12th house, and that's going to be a part of the chart which is more private to you, often very hidden, can be very emotional. There may be an aspect of yourself which is really mulling over how you feel about things, There may have been a change of residence, a change of situation that may have had something to do with family or your community in some way. This is a part of a bigger cycle that's changing with both Saturn and the North Node in your 11th house, changing your look on the future, for example, especially until February with Saturn, but until July with the North Node. And then Venus, your ruler, is with the South Node, and that's in the 5th house. And that's especially related to how you express yourself. And when I say express yourself, it's not only verbally, that can be, how you talk about things, because it's certainly with Virgo, that can be part of that. But it's self-expression in a more general way. How do you allow yourself to show up? How do you create? How do you reach out into love, into romance, into the life of your children, or the notion around, having children, for example. And all of these things are very strong for you right now. The 12th house also connects you to foreigners, foreign lands, faraway places. And so there may be something there as well. But this Venus South Node is really, really pertinent to you, Taurus, because it's something that might require you to recognize where there's a lot of self-criticism. This is something that often holds Taurus back. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, not so easy to change once you get going. When you get on track, it's hard to slow you down. And so here with the 5th house, also Earth, but mutable Earth, with a Venus that can be quite critical or fussy, seeing what's wrong instead of what could be better. This is an opportunity to really look at that and recognize that that might be contributing to how you feel about yourself. Certainly, the notion of how you communicate is really on the table for Taurus because Jupiter is there and it has been there since June, 9th of June, and it will continue to be there until the 30th of June, 2026. So you've got a lot of focus on communication, friends, your extended family, your neighborhood, and the people around you, the ones that you connect with every day. Um, and that's something that is tying in also to this moon because the moon is ruling this 3rd house. So there may be a part of you that just wants to crawl under the duvet and not show up. But really, don't let yourself do that for too long. There's no harm in doing that. Take a day off, take a couple of days, and let yourself feel that need to hibernate, that need to move into your own space, but use it constructively to examine what actually is happening inside my mind, in my unconscious, in my physical health as well, because here we're illuminating something in the axis of physical, mental, and psychological health as well. And Mars is very, very strong across the way in your house of relationships. So there's a lot of dynamism around relationship. Be careful of being grumpy if you feel grumpy. If you don't feel grumpy, you might find that people are coming at you feeling a bit grumpy, but actually it gives you a lot of capacity to sort things out because it's a strong Mars. It's a Mars that can face the music, as it were, and this is the Mars that's ruling this moon. So you might be realizing that there's something going on that you think, oh, I can't do this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want this relationship anymore. And especially because your ruler, Venus, on the South Node in the House of Romance might be saying, I think we're done here. And coming from either direction again, because Mars is there in the 7th, it might be, oh, he thinks we're done here, or she thinks we're done here. So there we are. And again, these are things that are both passing, happening in the space of a couple of days, but also regenerating a cycle. They're starting a cycle. So Venus is on the South Node as a new cycle of Venus connecting with the South Node. And then, of course, that means opposing the North Node. So there's something that needs to be shed, changed, let go of, an attitude, especially as Venus, it's like your little emissary as she goes around the chart, your ruler. And she'd much rather be out here looking at the future, pining for the fjords or whatever, looking at things in a much more optimistic way. But she's looking at what's not really right or doesn't feel appropriate anymore. So again, with a sense of discernment as opposed to disappointment or disillusionment, look at all of those things at face value and say, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I don't really want your company anymore, or I need more of you, and this is how I need you to show up in my life, for example. Mercury is in a really tight square with Pluto for the days around this full moon. And there may be something that needs to be spoken about. There will be a revelation of something that can be coming through a relationship, whether that's a business partnership or a life partner, something about how you are out in the world that needs to be dealt with, to get you to that understanding of the Pluto in the 10th. And that Pluto in the 10th is really about overcoming fears or overcoming patterns of behavior that are blocking your way of showing up in the world. And it's ruled by this Saturn that's just now coming back in the 11th house, which is getting you sorted about friends and the people you hang out with, the groups of acquaintances and the people you spend time with in terms of the, I don't know if it's like political or social or religious activities that you like to do, but it's a focus on your future, getting serious about your future. Maybe you need to talk to somebody about, financial planning, for example. That can also be part of the Venus South Node, as I mentioned in the intro. And you do have Jupiter in the third house with Uranus in the second, so there can be something here about financial planning, which is never very far from your mind and Taurus anyway, so that wouldn't be exceptional. But yeah, give yourself, if you need a day under the covers, go ahead and have that, but don't let yourself brood and be moody for too long because there's a lot to do. And then soon enough, within a day or so of this full moon, you're going to have the moon coming into your first house. And so that's going to put the emphasis on you and how you feel. That can bring you round to yourself. And the moon is exalted in your sign, Taurus, so that it will feel a lot better. All right, so I'll see you in the next video, Taurus. Gemini, this is happening in your 11th house, and the full moon is telling you something about your vision for your future or what's coming through gains from what you do, the things that you receive from other people, how you might connect with other people. You have Aries in the 11th house, so that's one of the reasons why Gemini is known for just kind of going its own way, doing its own thing, kind of showing up in ways that are like rapid fire. Here I am. I'm not here anymore. And that's because Mars is the ruler of your 11th, and it's Aries. It's all about just kind of jumping in, testing the waters and jumping back out if you feel like it. So your ruler Mercury is in the sixth house, and especially with a very strong Mars that's ruling it and in a square to Pluto, there must be something here that is concerning you around work that may be part of this future vision that you're looking at or that needs to be sorted out in a practical way. Certainly Saturn and then later Neptune going back into your 10th house is part of this. How do I reconfigure my responsibilities out in the world or my reputation or the way I show up out in the world, or if it's a vocation or a job or a career, that's part of this dynamic because your ruler's in the sixth house and a lot of that activity is in the 10th house. Jupiter is in the second house, trining, both ruling and trining the 10th house, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So there can be some really, really favorable things happening for you in terms of work and career that you need to just put your nose down and get stuff done. And the part of Gemini that is most challenging is the notion of dispersion, doing too many things, not taking them seriously, being superficial, being too light about things. Maybe this is the opportunity for you to realize where you need to take things more seriously. Venus on the South Node in your fourth house is where you might realize there's something about your emotional needs that needs to be addressed, let go of, changed. Um, this can also be around security, emotional security, or literal security in terms of where do I live, home, property. Um, if it's about family, maybe there's a need to show up differently with reference to your family. Or because of that Mars, Mercury, your ruler Mars your ruler Mercury and Mars in your sixth house, you might actually need to be taking care of family, so that your role is changing, but it's because somebody needs you or you need somebody. If that's the case, you're certainly well equipped to deal with that because you've got Jupiter in the second, really strong. quite benevolent for you, and that if it's you that needs the support from your family, perhaps you've had an accident or you are, convalescing, or you need some attention for care. Jupiter from the second means that you're getting something from your family, you're receiving help. That might be financial, but it could also be just sort of moral support, just a general feeling of benevolence coming from the family. And that actually, again, it can connect you to your parents. The Jupiter rules your 10th, where we find Saturn and the North Node. Again, this is why I might think it could be something to do with a family member that you're giving attention to. Either way, it's going to work out well, even though you're going to be working your butt off for the next few weeks for sure with the Mars and the Mercury there. Mercury squaring Pluto might have something where you're becoming aware, as I said in the introduction, of how your everyday life is actually not supporting your sense of what your purpose is or your bigger vision for life. Pluto is moving in that ninth house, trying to get you to see a new vision for who you are and how you're doing yourself, how you're doing life, how you're showing up in this world. What do you have faith in? And that's also supported by the trine from Uranus that's changing you, changing how you show up in your physical self, but also just how you engage, how you reach out into everyday life. So definitely, if you can find some time over the weekend or in the days ahead, take take that document that I'm going to attach in the comments, or not in the comments, sorry, in the description box below this video, and fill it out and look at all the things that might need to be done differently and how you might find more efficiency as you go towards these goals and this vision of how you might want to either see your future or participate in it or connect with people socially, and who should be in your life and how. Maybe that's about work, the work that you want to accomplish out in the world too, for the benefit of all. All right, so good luck with that, Gemini. I'll see you in the next video. Cancer. Sorry, I just took a sip of tea and it went sideways. Um, Cancer, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. You have the blessing of Jupiter in your first house, and this lunation is in your 10th house. And it's showing you something about your career or your social status. Now, this is important for Cancer, pardon me, Cancer, not only because it's your ruler, the moon rules Cancer, but because it's angular to you, it's the 10th house. That means you have Jupiter in the first, and the sun in the fourth, and the moon in the 10th. And that angularity makes this moment in time really powerful for Cancer, sun, moon, and ascendant. Um, and so when you have this, it's what I would consider to be a real blessing of an opportunity to see yourself in your career for a new beginning, some new start, and it's tied in the bigger, grander scheme of things with the Saturn-Neptune, that's also engaging in your 10th house between 2025 and 2026. And I've spoken a lot about that, so you'll find my videos on Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And then, of course, we'll talk about that for many, many months to come. But this is an opportunity for you to look really carefully. Where am I dilly-dallying around? Where am I not putting in the energy that I should? Have I got the right goal? Have I got the right career goal? So Venus is in your third house. That's also linked to willpower and goals. Venus in on the South Node there in your third house may be showing you, actually, I was kind of chasing the wrong thing. With Venus representing money of all kinds and relationships and dynamics and people, women in particular, or people in general, extended family relationships. But especially because Venus is ruling your 11th house of gains and the gains that you earn from what you do, and also the fourth house of your home and family of origin, your lineage, and so on. And the fact that it's on the South Node, it might be realizing you've been going about things all wrong and you're ready to change, or that there's a sense that you've been going about things all right and you need to move away from certain dynamics, certain relationships as a way of keeping yourself on the path. or reinforcing the path. And you might get with the Venus South Node through friends or through family or so, you might actually meet somebody who's incredibly powerful, very karmic relationship. Venus South Node can have meetings, encounters with people that are very karmic. Now, alas, Venus is in her fall, so she's not in her best place, let's say. She's not only in her fall because she's opposite Pisces, where she's exalted, but also she's 12 houses from the sign that she rules. And so she's a bit hidden here. So there can be something that is a little bit more connected to dissatisfaction or recognition of things that feel heavy and difficult and less than desirable. And that can be really healthy too for relationship patterns where you realize, okay, I need to show up differently. I need to show up with different people. I need to show up less or more or whatever. Venus in the third is also connected to communication, and it's ruled by Mercury, which is now in the fifth house, ruled by Mars, which is also in the fifth house. So it might be that you have an opportunity to do a lot of creative communicating or communicating based on things that have to do with taking a bit of a risk in terms of how you show up in your creative dynamic or in love or romance, etc. You have Mercury in a square to Pluto, Mercury from the fifth in a square to Pluto in the eighth, which can have you needing to talk about things that are more intimate with someone that you love. And that can include well, it can be things that are uncomfortable, let's say, eighth house taboo things. So whether it's intimate in terms of sexual, emotional, psychological intimacy, or if it's just private, meaning, because that's also 4, 8, 12, these are private places. That's where we find the Sun, the Pluto, and Uranus. The privacy might be about having to talk about finances, and Mercury, Mars is here in the house of entrepreneurship. Are you um, taking a risk in your business, or are you doing something around business? And for example, I had to spend days here um, trying to reestablish myself. I am a Cancer moon and ascendant, and I had to reestablish myself in the form of a company rather than just a freelancer. So I keep my freelance status and I work through my company. So this is one way that these things, these patterns can manifest. So this is ongoing for me. It hasn't happened yet, but it's a question of around this time. And it had to happen, and this was the time I had available, and it also happens that it's very, very much in alignment with what's going on right now. So if this is you and you need to readjust the way that you're working, if you are working for yourself, that's the fifth house, entrepreneurial stuff. With the moon in the 10th, you're really seeing what needs to be done. Go back to April 8th of 2024, that eclipse that happened in your 10th house. And remember and listen to the introduction again, find out all those dates, and remember what started at that time and what needs to be adjusted, that what are you realizing about this so that this cycle can be completed and take you into a new phase. Um, I think that's it, Cancer. Do listen if you haven't already to the introduction because there's a lot there also that would be very helpful for you. All right, see you in the next video. Leo, of course, the sun is your ruler, and that always matters during lunations. So just like Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, Leo's ruled by the sun, and so you're always kind of you're always on Leo. It's always about you because we're looking at the sun all the time. And here we have the sun in opposition to the moon, or the moon rather opposed the sun, and being therefore the reflection of your light, the sun's light, and glowing bright in the sky. And this is the culmination of something that is ninth house related. So this can be around your sense of your faith or purpose. Why am I doing what I do? Why am I being who I am? How am I showing up in my life? Is this on point? And do I feel like I understand my greater motivations, my ikigai, as it were, what gets me out of bed? And there's something that you can look for in terms of this moon in the ninth house, where you can get some guidance around what makes you feel motivated. Am I on the right track? Am I seeing the right uh, goal, the right aims? Because you've got Uranus in your 11th house of your sense of the future, and also your social connections and how you reach out into society. And and so this can play a really huge role for you in terms of finding what is missing or finding what you realize once and for all, this is what I want. And then you use this time to strategize for the months ahead as you go through the winter, well, in northern hemisphere winter, the months of the last 3, 4 months of the year, 2025, and the first 3, 4 months of 2026, when Uranus is going to go back and forth between your 10th house of career and how you show up and your reputation and your social status and so on, and then go back 26th of April into your 11th house. So you have all this time now to focus on how you can um, work through what you believe is important, what's important to you philosophically or spiritually, or and just in terms of your higher purpose, and how you can use that and show up every day with that in a way that I've described already in the introduction. So do make sure you listen if you haven't already. And and of course, this is also where we find Venus on the south node in your second house, Venus ruling your 10th house of the world outside and how you engage with that and your reputation and your career and all those things. And Venus rules your third house also of your social engagements and extended family and how you reach out into your casual friendships and so on. So there's something here that maybe you're recognizing your values don't align any longer with the values of the people around you or with the work that you're doing or the mission that you thought you had out in the world. This can certainly directly impact your desire to earn money. What the Buddha calls right livelihood, for example. Am I earning money in an appropriate way? That's, for example, that's one reason why I don't monetize my YouTube videos because of the work of YouTube and Google and what they're doing to society and to the world at large. And so this is something that might be part of your reflection at this time. And Saturn and Neptune going through the eighth house of shared resources, but also shared values. What do I share with others? How do I share it? Getting serious about that. This can be also about your value, your sense of self-worth, and maybe again realizing where there's a part of you that had been compromising. It's a bit of a myth that Leo is super confident and outgoing and so on. Depends on the chart, of course, but often Leo is here to learn that lesson, to learn how to be a Leo. We're all here to learn our lessons of what we're here to experience in this lifetime, and often it can be that Leo is very behind the scenes and not comfortable at all taking a bigger role out there. Maybe this is something that you're realizing, okay, I'm selling myself short, or I need to show up in a different way based on how I feel about myself. Again, keeping in mind that you don't want to be in that sort of complaining, self-judgmental attitude, or seeing the glass half empty, in terms of the Venus in the second house on the south node. There may be a source of income that's changing as well. This is also because Venus is, ruling your 10th house of your career and so on. And also we've got Uranus in your 11th house of gains. So maybe new ways of earning money that need to be reflected at this time, and that you're gearing up for something very different. And all of it has to be filtered through the sense of what am I here for? What is life all about? Um, how do I channel, let's say, what I have faith in, or how do I be a conduit for something that I find important? Mars and Mercury are in your fourth house. Mercury is squaring Pluto. So the fourth house is all about security, what you need to feel stable and secure. That's emotionally as well as materially, but also literally in terms of where do I live and so on. There can be a desire for things to be different around the house and home. This can be quite literally something like I need to renovate, for example. But it can also be, especially because Mercury is squaring Pluto, which has just 2 years ago entered into your seventh house and is trining that Uranus and visioning the future. There may be a big change in terms of how you relate to home and family and lineage or your life partner. A bigger change is underway for sure, especially 2026, when Chiron will also, for the first time, move into the 10th. And then Saturn Neptune will move more firmly into the ninth house. So there can be a lot of change around partnerships of all kinds, business as well as intimate. So the more you're in tune with your values, the more you're in tune with what you feel is really important to live by, and then manifest that out in the world with integrity. This is a very strong Leo word. And you've got, a Capricorn, another sign that represents integrity on the sixth house, ruled by Saturn, which is coming back into your ninth as of February. So the way that you do your work, the way you show up every day is in integrity. That's also the symbolism of Leo. And are you doing that? Are you happy with that? Are you able to be confident in your heart of hearts, Leo, and live that way? Um, so yeah, a really good time to reflect on all of these bigger questions and to see how that might be something to look forward to in a new cycle. That is, who am I? What am I doing out here? What am I doing with this life? All right, Leo, I will see you in the next video. Good luck with all of that. So Virgo, as usual, because this is with the nodal axis in your sign, this is a big moment. So I've been saying lots of things about Virgo lately. You are again on the hot seat with Venus on the south node in your sign, whether it's sun, moon, or ascendant. And and this is quite significant because it's something about you that is important in terms of letting go, a dynamic around relationships. And because the lunation itself, the full moon, is happening in your eighth house of intimacy, you might be realizing something about how you are in relationships, sort of behind closed doors, or in a more unconscious way, or a sort of psychological way, emotionally connecting with people, or finding it difficult to connect with people. Mars is in the third house, very, very strong because it's in the house that it rules, and sorry, the sign that it rules. And Mars does really, really well in the third house. It's very strong. It's busy getting stuff done. And your ruler, Mercury, is also in the third house, ruled by that Mars, and in a square to Pluto in your sixth house. So there's something that maybe you're finding some challenge in terms of being connected to your partner or even a business partner, and how things are manifesting through a business relationship, where it's because you're doing so much, or that you need to realize you need to refine how you're doing what you're doing, work smarter, not harder, kind of thing. Um, Certainly with Saturn going back into the seventh, there can be some dynamic around what this relationship energy requires at this time. That's an ongoing story that's been there since March 2023, but it's coming back for review until February, and then Neptune will be there from the end of the 21st of October, I think, until January 26th. So this is a big theme right now. So me in relationship with the other, if there's something that needs to be said with Mercury and Mars in Scorpio, and also I haven't spoken about her much, but Black Moon Lilith is there too. If there's something that needs to be said, um, take a breath, because Mars, certainly Mercury ruled by Mars, but also Mars itself with Mercury in the third house can lead to tense words, some arguments or difficulties. Um, which may be necessary. It may be something that needs to be said and that needs to be clarified. And that Mars intensity around whether it's your dynamics around taking a decision, making a choice around something, participating in something that needs to be discussed or negotiated, it's all going to impact that eighth house of what you share with others. Are you able to connect and bond with others, or is that something that's challenging at the moment? But definitely also keep in mind that you need to feel like you're aware of how you're receiving things from others. Whether it be family patterns that you've inherited, or literally money and stuff that you've inherited, or is it the way that you engage intimately with the people around you? Um, do you let them in? Might be a way of looking at that. Do I let the people around me in, or do I keep a certain defensive distance? Is my relationship more pragmatic, etc.? So this is also where the Venus South Node can help you, where you're looking at, um, is there part of me that's too fussy, too picky? Am I serving myself with that attitude, or am I hard on myself and then finding myself always compromising for another? And here's where you can realize part of that and say, well, actually, based on this notion of my self-worth and others' feelings of what I am worthy of, or what I am worth, can I actually find a better place, a more comfortable place to be in relationship? And this, of course, has to do with finances. Naturally, Jupiter will support that a lot, by the way. Jupiter in the 11th house of gains, where it also happens to be in its joy. That's traditionally the house of the joy of Jupiter, as it's also exalted. So, Jupiter in Cancer for a Virgo rising is extremely benefic, extremely helpful. And it's ruling, or rather being ruled by that moon in the eighth house. So there's maybe something that is coming through a benefactor or somebody who's a real help, people in high places or friends with friends who are super supportive, well-positioned people that are constructive in your life, being in the right place at the right time that can bring you real benefit right now. You do want to be a bit strategic about these things, but also keeping in mind how you speak about things. Avoid gossip, avoid complaining, avoid arguments if you can, and turn them into constructive discussions based on things that are realistic and having done a thorough assessment of your part in the whole dynamic before being annoyed at other people. I think that's it for Virgo. I will see you in the next video. And this Mercury squaring Pluto, again, there can be something to do with work and the changes that are happening around work or even health. This might have something to do with mental health, of course, because it's the moon in the eighth, Pluto in the sixth, and the Mercury in the third house, which is also about the mind. This is the house of the mind. And so it can be important for you to recognize where anger, anxiety, being, too focused on things, too much focus. This is part of the Virgo dynamic with a Scorpio in the third. Virgo does not let go of a thought. It does not release the obsessive thinking. That's the Mars Scorpio dynamic third. Check that and don't do it anymore. So Venus on the South Node says, is it good for me? Okay, drop it then. For the sake of your health or the sake of your everyday experience. Okay, good luck with that, Virgo. I'll see you in the next video. Libra, this is of course a very impactful moon for you because it's the sun in your sign opposite, but being opposed by the moon in the sign of the other. So there's something here about relationship dynamics or your ability to see the other, or to see yourself through the eyes of the other. Mirroring something back at you very, very powerfully at the Aries full moon every year. Of course, that's part of the dynamic here for you. But all the more so, especially if you have the degrees around 13, 14, 15 degrees of Libra, sun, moon, or ascendant, that's all the more powerful for you. Your ruler, Venus, is in the 12th house, so she's invisible to you. She's in a place where things are happening behind the scenes, not necessarily out in the open, maybe even beyond your conscious awareness, but also potentially just in a discreet way, where it's not yet time to reveal something. Venus on the South Node is saying that something needs to end with reference to either a way that you're showing up or a way you're relating to yourself through your unconscious self or through some hidden aspects of yourself or relationships. If there are relationships that are hidden, Venus also rules your eighth house of intimacy. And so that might be that there's a realization around the appropriateness or otherwise of a relationship, and it's time to let that go. Or it can be a realization around a sense of your connection to what feels nourishing and spiritual to you, because that eighth house ruled by Venus is also occult things and things that have to do with the deeper mysteries of life, let's say, and the, sort of deeper meanings of things. So this can be an opportunity for you also to realize, okay, it's time for me to let go of a certain attitude towards those things so I can move with more discernment. Sometimes people get caught up in movements, ideas, philosophies that are not helpful, that don't really work for you. And especially as Saturn and the Neptune are going back and forth between your sixth and your seventh, there may be something you got caught up with in your everyday life and that you're trying to disentangle yourself from. That can also be about a job, but it could be also about something that you have got yourself involved in behind the scenes. Of course, the eighth house also can represent it's another part of the psychological house. Saturn rules your fourth house, which is another psychological house, and then of course the 12th is as well. So with the nodal axis here, this might have something to do with depression or mental health or some, need for you to care more for yourself, and to release unhealthy habits, unhealthy indulgences, you could say, addictions, behaviors. Addictions are anything from shopping to sex to gambling to drugs and alcohol and all those different things. If that's the case, this would be a really brilliant time for you to find what you need, how you need to get support to be able to do that. Um, and then do listen to the introduction to this video because there was a good segment there on practical ways that you can work through this and try and focus your attention going forward. This is especially true if you find yourself aware now of relationships that are dysfunctional. Saturn, Neptune going into your seventh will have triggered a certain awareness around what needs to change in relationships or who needs to be in or out of relationship with you. And especially as the moon is there now, roughly at the same time that Chiron and Eris are conjoined, um, you're realizing something about relationships that needs to change, that has come into your awareness lately. This might be about business partnerships, where the moon is the ruler of the 10th house, where we find Jupiter. And Jupiter it's exalted in your 10th house. So there's a lot of focus on your social status, which is anyway a Libra thing, to be focused on the image of things, to be focused on how people see me, for example. And with the moon in the 7th and squaring the 10th, this can be really important. How do they see me? But it's very helpful for you. Jupiter is ruling your 6th house of everyday life, how you might want to change things, ruling your 3rd house of your community and your communication, how you engage with other people. So that can be really constructive right now as you hold the image of what it is you want to accomplish, how you want to reach out into the world. Your reputation is also the 10th house, your social status in general, meaning married, not married, etc., parents, not a parent. All of these things are being changed in a very dynamic way. And especially so because, around the time of the eclipses, there was a lot of activity in your house of self, and that was creating a grand air trine with Pluto and Uranus, which has already, for quite a while now, been shaping up how you show up based on how you feel, what you feel you're here for. Yeah, so busy time for you, to look at those bigger questions of maybe it's time to let go of certain things. And this can have something to do with money, or family, because the 2nd house is also what supports you. And it looks like you're having to do a bit on your own here. With Venus on the south node, that's your ruler on the south node, and the moon in the house of the other, it seems like the ball is in their court, or at least how you relate and what you become aware of is something you need to grapple with. And then the 2nd house requires a little managing here, because with Mars there in the 2nd house, very powerful. You feel capable of doing things. You're maybe more certain of your value, certain of your values, and maybe more hungry to go after an income, ask for a pay rise or something like that. Mercury is squaring Pluto in the 5th. So again, this might have something to do with money that needs to be spent around family or around children or around values in that sense, and things that need to be discussed or addressed within the context of family. That again has an impact on you in your day-to-day experience. So lots and lots of change for Libra, for all the cardinal signs. This is all in the quadrant area. So the The first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th are like the backbone of the chart. And this is where a lot of this activity is focused. So you're really reconstructing yourself in these years, Libra. You're creating a whole new establishment for things in these years. So a good time to really take that seriously and just shed relationships that are inappropriate, unhelpful, dragging you down behind the scenes and including indulgences as well. Okay, Libra, all the best with that, and I'll see you in the next video. Scorpio, this full moon is happening in your sixth house of your everyday work and your health, the schedules that you keep, the habits that you have. So there's an awareness here of something that's extremely powerful. Mars is in your first house of self and activating that. So you seem to have a sense of what's necessary in your work life, in your everyday life. Maybe even if you have some kind of health issue, this could be that. With the moon in Aries in the sixth house, ruled by a really strong Mars in the first house, your ruler, that could be a headache. It can be a metaphorical headache or a literal one. And so there might be something here that you're realizing is coming to a head in the very literal physical sense, and also in terms of the metaphorical sense of things coming to a head in my work. How do I reorganize that? And do listen to the introduction because you'll get some ideas around how that all can manifest. So Mars in your first house is really empowering for you. Mercury is there too, meaning that there's something that you need to negotiate or discuss. And Mercury is squaring Pluto, which is your modern ruler. I stick to Mars, but we have to acknowledge Pluto has a strong affinity for Scorpio. And so very interesting that Mercury ruled by your Mars is in a square here to Pluto. And of course, the week before, it was Mars squaring Pluto from your house of self to your fourth house. So there may be something here about your feelings of security, your home and property. If you're in a sale, for example, you're trying to sell a house, you're trying to, reestablish something of a foundation in your life, which can be literal or a philosophical or a psychological foundation in your life. There's a lot of work that you're doing towards that. It's not that you can't do it because you're more than capable of doing this work with a really strong Mars there in your first house. But you will be putting a lot of energy into it. And with the moon in the sixth house, again, ruled by that Mars, it's intense, but it's something that you've become aware of. I need to put more juice into this. I need to put more energy into this. Part of the dynamic here is that Venus is on the south node in your 11th house of gains and your vision for your future. So it may be that you're recognizing something of a desire for the future or a wish is no longer what you thought it was. It's not what you wanted anymore. And certainly the eclipses will have helped you understand that. To a certain extent, the 7th of September eclipse, but very much so the 21st of September eclipse, which was here. That will have been a part of this bigger picture. So don't forget what you've learned since then and apply it now. Recognize also there might be some dynamics around socializing or relationships or society itself that don't vibe any longer, that you just really need to let go of. It can be an individual, a person, because Venus rules your seventh house of the other. But it can be just relationships in general, or the way that you relate in general that is changing now, necessarily so. And so a very, very busy time for you to really take stock and look at how you want to shape up in your life through your everyday, what can sometimes feel like everyday little details, but they matter a lot. And stay focused on a wider goal around that. Jupiter is in your ninth house, so you do have a certain support there for a sense of a vision or a bigger picture around your higher purpose, your sense of why you're here and doing things. It could be a really great time to learn or teach. So learning from a teacher who would be extremely beneficial because it's a really well-placed Jupiter in exalted in Cancer. So if you find a teacher right now, they will be very good for you. They will be really, really helpful. Or a counselor or a guide or somebody who plays that kind of role, a mentor or something like that can be really helpful. And maybe that's what you need to sort out your everyday story at this moment because Jupiter is being ruled by that moon in the sixth, which is ruled by the Mars in your first house. So there's something that connects you to your everyday. Maybe it's that you need to have somebody who's like a coach to help you walk yourself through these new ways of showing up for yourself every day and also for work. This is the axis also of the notion of, where do I give or overgive? And especially as Neptune is in there, beware of that. With Neptune in the sixth, and that's for a long time now, for over a decade, you're going to be thinking about this. Where can I realize that I'm overgiving, overdoing it, overpromising? That can actually also lead to psychosomatic illness with Neptune in the sixth. Um, that's that. I think we'll leave it at that. I think, Scorpio, I think I've said it all. Interesting times, for sure, for sure. And also with Uranus in a trine from the fourth to the eighth, there's maybe something here you're recognizing that needs to change in terms of your inner workings, your intimacy, your relationship to yourself psychologically, or even to your family lineage, and so on, and how that can reshape things, or a relationship, dynamic around a life partner or business partner. This is all part of the bigger scope of change that you're in right now. So you're reflecting on that with Mercury squaring Pluto, and that will give you some insight. You will definitely gain insight with Mercury squaring Pluto, some sudden awareness of something that you can apply in a bigger way to how you make your choices going forward. All right, good luck with that, Scorpio. See you in the next video. Sagittarius, the moon is in your fifth house of self. It's trinal to you. And the fifth house is, sorry, not yourself, your self-expression. So yourself is you. That's the Sagittarius first house, sun, moon, or ascendant. And in the fifth from you is Aries. And so we find the moon there. And it's an awareness of myself. What do I need to be happy? How do I manifest my happiness? What do I do to express my happiness? How do I create and make my creative expression real? And that's especially true that you might find a lot of creative impulse from the unconscious side of life because your ruler Jupiter is in the eighth house and it's being ruled by this moon that's in your fifth house. And at the same time, the ruler of your fifth house is in your 12th house, very powerful, Mars in Scorpio with Mercury also in Scorpio. So, yes, also in Scorpio, 12th house. So you have a capacity to reach into your imagination, your perhaps dream world, or, through lucid dreaming or something that allows you to really bring out an awareness of something that you want to apply and how you want to bring more joy and happiness into your life. It can also connect you to something that feels more intimate. Uranus is changing your relationship dynamics in your seventh house. And with Jupiter in the eighth house, you feel this desire for a deeper bond. And that's your ruler again. So very, very important to you. Jupiter rules your fourth house as well, of home and family. And I will come back in another video and talk about the trine from Jupiter to Saturn, but that's going to be really supportive in a psychological way, emotionally, and also in terms of the way that you live and how you might connect with an intimate partner around the actual physical house and home. Mercury is also squaring Pluto from the 12th to the 3rd. So again, it can be about pulling some information through your unconscious or through dreams or through contemplation, just sitting on your own, isolating a little bit, sitting on your own and realizing things. And Pluto in the 3rd makes you focus a lot on the truth with a capital T, making you realize there's something that I need to take seriously in terms of how I communicate. No more wasted time. For example, listen to the introduction again. Pluto in the 3rd is really intense around speaking, around the notion of using communication, using words. There's certainly going to be a revelation with Pluto. It's extremely the awareness of motivations, using your willpower, for example, with Pluto in the 3rd, is really, really picking up over these last couple of years, and it continues for many years to come. And with Mercury squaring that, you'll probably get some really interesting insights into how to actually work with that. And then, of course, Venus at the top of your chart, in terms of your career or your social status or your reputation or your sense of the your aims and ambitions in life is kind of shifting all of that. It's something needs to be let go of. Maybe there's a desire that is no longer valid, and you're reestablishing that. This is a new cycle that Venus is establishing with the South Node, letting go of a previous ambition. And that might be financial because Venus rules your 11th house of gains. Um, and pardon me, and it might be in terms of your everyday work. I don't want to do this job anymore because Venus rules your sixth house of work. And this might be for very good reasons, for health reasons. You might be realizing I don't feel joy any longer. I don't feel happy in my life. I'm a Sagittarius. I'm supposed to feel happy. But again, remember, especially as I mentioned in the beginning, that whole the challenge around showing up for others, that's also part of the Sagittarius Sun Moon Ascendant, is pretending that things are okay when they're not, and being all chirpy and cheerful with Gemini on the 7th. But not feeling it. So this could be a really good time to be really clear what actually makes me happy. And this can be take your job and shove it at moment, for example, with Venus on the South Node. Or your boss might say, sorry, you're out the door, and you can say, oh, well, thank you. This is all very karmic. And now I can really go deep into who I am and how I want to express myself and create my own thing. Fifth house is also working for yourself, working on your own, being an entrepreneur. And Venus on the South Node, 10th house, I'm going to work differently. And the North Node is in the fourth house. I know what I need to feel secure, focus on my home, focus on my family, my lineage, what makes me feel stable. So, and with a Jupiter in the eighth house, this can be extremely supported. So, when my dog is starting, see, it's Sagittarius again. My dog starts waking up. And so before it was coughing, now it's the dog. You just have to wait, puppy. Um, and you don't even get to see her because I haven't got my video on. Okay, Sag, I'll see you in the next video. Take good care. And Capricorn, this full moon is happening in your fourth house. So from the 10th house of career, a light shining back from your fourth house of my emotional, psychological, and even material security. How do I feel about what's going on in my life right now? And certainly because your ruler has just come from the fourth house, backing up on the 1st of September into your third house. So there's a part of you that is examining how to reestablish this foundation in your life. And so this is a great time. Be conscious of how you're planning to reestablish a sense of, what makes me feel secure? What do I need to be happy? Fifth house is how you express that happiness. The fourth house is how you structure that, how you allow for that to feel possible. And so you can really use that this energy, this dynamic, to make yourself feel more grounded in what you need. And so your exaltation ruler, Mars, is up there in the 11th house, and it's very strong because it's in its own sign in Sagittarius, and it's also with Mercury. Mars and Mercury in the 11th are having you focus a lot on gains, financial gains. Also, Pluto in your second house, same thing. Jupiter in your seventh house, really important because it's the lunation in the fourth is ruling this Jupiter in Cancer, which is exalted there and right across the table from you. So you might be being able to negotiate something around a contract. Saturn, your ruler in the third house, with the North Node ruled by that Jupiter, and the Uranus in the sixth house, ruled by that Mercury, focusing on the future, focusing on gains. This would be a great time to be aware of contractual arrangements, maybe adjusting. Mercury squaring Pluto can, from the house of gains to the house of income and possessions and so on, can have you really laser focused and insightful around money, investments, how you need to take care of all that stuff. Venus, which rules your house of investments, but also taking risks, is in the ninth house with the south node. So beware of how you're taking risks. You're not, generally speaking, a risk taker. It depends on your chart, but Capricorn tends to play the long game. And Venus on the south node in the ninth house may make you realize where the the thing that you thought was important to you to do in this lifetime, it seems to have come to an end. It's a concluding cycle here. And and so Venus is kind of like saying, well, the thing I thought was important, I'm digesting and interpreting in a new way now. And my pleasures, my desires, my relationships and all of that stuff is different now. And this will be in the week leading up to the lunation, but even in the days after, that you're still working on that basis. And then Venus, of course, rules your 10th house where the sun is. So this is definitely with reference to your social status and the work that you're doing or your career ambitions, for example. And so Venus is giving you some information. Think in terms of what you're ready to move on from and recognize that this is a turning of a tide, turning of a cycle. Certainly with Uranus going in your sixth house, your everyday life is taking a dramatic turn. It's not at all going to be the same. That's already from July through um, another month. So 7th of November, Uranus will move back in your fifth, but that's going to be a 7-year thing from end of April 2026. So your day-to-day life is changing. So make it meaningful. Really look into your future, get a sense of what do I want? How do I want to make myself feel grounded and secure? Maybe also in terms of your relational dynamics, the people that you hang out with. I need to maybe be a leader in my community. That's also an exalted Mars. Mars is, as I said, exaltation ruler for Capricorn. Maybe you realize, you know what, I need to stand for office. I need to become a local councillor or I need to start a non-governmental organization and clean this stuff up or whatever it is. And this can be a really opportune time for you to take action in that way and step away from whatever it was that you were doing and realize, no, now I'm all fired up about this new thing. Um, all right, so make the most of this, Capricorn. I'll see you in the next video. Aquarius, this is a very interesting time for you with this lunation happening in your third house of your neighborhood, the local space around you, your sense of your day-to-day goals and aims, and your how you use your willpower. This seems to be tied to your ambition, your career ambition, but also your social ambitions, your reputation, how you want to reach out into the world, which is super on fire right now. Mercury from the 10th house up in the top of your chart is squaring Pluto at the beginning of your first house of self or sun, moon, and ascendant. And there's something here that you're aware of that may be being revealed to you about either your career or the people around you, or even quite literally your parents, for example, because Saturn, your ruler's in the house of family, and the 10th house represents parents, family, society, bosses, people in high places. Be careful you don't pick a fight with people like that. You might be so ambitious that you get up their nose or they're worried about their own job, and that might actually undermine you. Just be careful of that, especially because Venus is there with the South Node in the eighth house. And so there may be something that's a little bit sneaky that's done a little bit behind the scenes. It doesn't look too bad. Jupiter is in your sixth house, so that's quite helpful for day-to-day stuff. But just beware of how you show up because Moon in the third will have you really focused on these goals and have you very busy, especially because also not only is it the moon in its houses of its joy in the third house with a really strong rulership, Mars in the 10th, angular, but also Jupiter in the sixth is in extremely good dignity and keeping you busy, keeping you on your toes with an exalted Jupiter in Cancer, ruling the second house of money and your values and your possessions, as well as the 11th house of your future. So you're certainly it's a great time for long-term planning. All the more so as we get into November when Jupiter and Saturn will be really strongly trining each other. They're moving into an orb of a trine slowly through October, but it's going to be most of November and into December that they're really strongly trining each other, as Jupiter will station retrograde and Saturn will station direct from your sixth house to your second house. So money, family, health concerns, if there are any, don't look too bad because there's something that's very supportive here. If there's anything going on, obviously pay attention to it, but it doesn't look like that's a big issue. If you have a desire to start a new project, this is something that will you really want to put in a lot of your sense of what you want to experience, what your how does this feel to me? How will my everyday life feel based on what I'm choosing to do here? Maybe it's a YouTube video, maybe it's some other kind of platform, but really uh, think about that, look at the introduction and see how all of this might be panning out. Venus in the eighth house on the south node, there may be something karmic that comes through an inheritance or something that comes through, especially a woman. Venus rules your fourth house, lineage, home, family. On the south node in the eighth house of other people's money, you may be getting some money from a woman um, or from a client. So this can be a new way of earning money from clients or earning money from home, but in a different way. Something's different because it's Venus on the south node. It's either that it's ending or that you're realizing whatever's going on can't work any longer. I need a new system. Don't worry because Mars is really strong in the 10th house. So you're ambitious and you have a sense of capacity. So this is definitely something you can um, this is a bone you can chew on, let's say. Um, and Uranus is in the fifth house of self-expression, children, love, etc. And that's trining Pluto in your first house. So all of that is also changing you, but in a way that feels like I'm so ready for this. It feels really good. It feels very uplifting. Neptune and Saturn are doing their little back and forth between the third house around how you communicate, how you connect with extended family and the family and what supports you, as well as money and possessions and so on, income, all of those kinds of things. So you're getting sorted in a way that feels like you're becoming more practical. This is certainly what you could see in a moon in the third house. Be proactive. That would be the word to describe the moon in the third house, especially in Aries, with a very ambitious Mars at the top of your chart. Be proactive and act on behalf of what you feel like this is important for me. This is my most important thing to do in this moment, and I need to clear a path to be able to do it. And that might be shedding some aspects of relationship or patterns of relating that are also unconscious or inherited from family, and you realize, okay, we're done here. Or even around issues around money. Where does the money come from? Is it clean money? Is it dirty money? Is it legal, illegal? All those kinds of things. These can be quite literally what you're grappling with right now. Um, but somehow overall, you're meant to be coming towards your own values, your own source of self um, for both income and resourcefulness. All right, I think we've covered it pretty much there, Aquarius. So good luck with this. I'll see you in the next video. Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. This is happening in your second house. So the full moon in your second house is really waking you up to what is going on financially, to your values and your commitment around your values, your self-worth, and how you manifest that. And you've got Jupiter in the fifth house from you, as well as Mars up in the ninth house with Mercury in the ninth. So a lot of very helpful support coming trinally, which means that things are flowing, helpful, um, constructive. There's all the good words. Mars is extremely strong up in the ninth house with a kind of a sense of a spiritual mission. I'm on a mission from God, and that sense of I need to achieve this thing because it has a higher value to me. It's not because of just straightforward income, but the income that you might earn from that will be nourished by the fact that you have a sense of a higher purpose to the things that you're doing. And that doesn't have to be necessarily linked to your work only. It can also be that you have a vocation or a sense of, uh, you do things for charity, for example, and this is something that's important to you, and you just feel super motivated, and that makes you feel better. It can also increase your earnings, or you might find yourself focusing a lot on money spending. Again, money management is a big thing. Moon in the second house, again, the moon waxes and wanes, and it's not necessarily a sign of stability for money. Certainly, especially because Neptune is there and we've lost Saturn momentarily until February when Saturn moves back in to the second house. So there can be a little confusion around money. Be careful how you spend your money. Be careful who you give it to. You've got Pluto in the 12th house of loss. So be keenly aware of how you manage yourself, your time, your money, your energy, etc. with that Saturn in the first house ruling Pluto in the 12th. Neptune is your modern so-called ruler. Neptune is going to go back into your house of self on, I think it's the 21st of October, so soon enough. And then that's going to stay there until the 26th of January. So you've got about 3 months where Neptune will be back in your first house. And that can also have you realizing a certain spiritual side to you, a kind of a feeling of a higher purpose and mission. Again, that the Mars is enhancing there, and the Jupiter certainly feels like it's bringing you good fortune and an enhanced sense of how you show up in its exalted place in Cancer in the fifth house. So lots and lots of support for Pisces right now. The one thing that seems to be quite dynamic here is around the relationship aspect. So it can be that you're no longer bonded to the person that you thought you were, or that that relationship dynamic needs to change in a way that makes you feel this is more sustainable. So Venus is your exaltation ruler, and she's across the way in the sign of what's known as her fall, meaning that this is not a reflection on you or your personality. This is a reflection on what Venus is able to do for you. So when Venus goes into your seventh, there can be a certain amount of dissatisfaction with relationships. And for whatever reason, there's a million reasons why we might be dissatisfied with relationships. And it can be anything from the individual being the wrong one or to the circumstances around the dynamic of the relationship. You're too far away. There's something that's missing. Maybe the partner that you've fallen in love with is still entangled in a messy divorce or something like that, you know. So all of these things are possible. Venus rules your eighth house of intimacy, and there's something that she needs to change here to before she gets to that point of feeling the intimacy that's available there for Pisces, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. And so with the South Node, there's something that needs to be shed. Maybe it's about values. Do I share the same values as my partner? Are we relating in a way that's working for me? Do you need to live with your partner and your partner doesn't want to live with you? They want to keep their freedom or something like that. So again, your house and home is changing quite a lot with Uranus in the fourth, and that can feel destabilizing around what makes you feel grounded or what makes you feel secure, especially in the early period where we're only just getting used to this Uranus going in the fourth. And so this might be part of that dynamic. If do we live together? Don't we live together? Is this relationship actually making me happy? Now, Mercury is up there, the ruler of your fourth house, and the ruler of your seventh house is up there in your ninth house, again, with a strong vision for how things need to be. Mercury, especially in a fixed sign, has some pretty strong ideas, and it's in a square to that Pluto. So you might have some insights here as to how that all relates to what you believe in, what you have faith in, what you think is important, your sort of guiding philosophy of life. And again, if that's something that doesn't vibe with the relationship dynamic that you're in, and including if it's a business partner, for example, or even clients, if it doesn't vibe, you can fire your client or get rid of move away from a particular relationship dynamic, whether it's professional or personal. Um, Also moving away from the sense of victim-martyr dynamic in relationships. This is huge. I will take ownership for my role in relationship. I will become clear how I show up in relationships. No more sort of trying to manipulate my way to pity the other, or being a source of pity for another, for example, just to bring that awareness to yourself, especially as Saturn is there in your first house for just another 3 months, really. And so a really great opportunity for you to take full responsibility for how you show up in your life, and especially in the dynamic of relationships. So your ruler Jupiter is just doing so much for you right now. A lot of real benefit is coming through this. So I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing, but it can be incredibly empowering, very constructive. Know your self-worth, know your value, know how you're spending your money, um, and know what you want in relationships. And you'll find that this is a really productive time for you. Okay, Pisces, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks again for watching, for everyone here. And do, of course, all the things like, subscribe, share, etc. Comment below. It really does help people see that this video exists because YouTube doesn't push videos when they're not monetized in the same way as they push monetized videos. So I really do appreciate your being here, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.